Emma sat alone on the edge of her small apartment couch, staring at the soft glow of the streetlights outside her window. The city hummed quietly in the distance, the occasional car passing by like a reminder that life was still moving somewhere out there for someone else. She wrapped her arms around herself, not because she was cold, but because it felt like a shield against the quiet ache she carried inside. For as long as she could remember, Emma had been searching for understanding, for connection, for something she couldn't quite name. It wasn't that she was lonely in the conventional sense. She had friends, colleagues, even family who cared for her. But there was a hollow space in her heart that no casual conversation or routine gathering could ever fill. It was a longing that whispered when she was alone, a soft, persistent reminder that there were parts of her life she had yet to fully understand or embrace. Tonight felt heavier than most. Emma had spent the day at work, meticulously organizing files and running meetings. But each smile she offered her coworkers had felt like a mask she could barely hold in place. By the time she returned home, her apartment was quiet, almost painfully so. She let herself sink into the silence, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she could find a sense of peace in the stillness. Her phone buzzed against the wooden table, breaking the calm. She reached for it instinctively, expecting a routine message from a friend or a reminder of tomorrow's schedule. Instead, it was a notification from Dr. Collins, her therapist. "Emma, would you be able to come in for a late session tonight? Something important has come up, and I think it would help to talk it through." Her breath caught. Late sessions weren't common. Dr. Collins was professional, structured, and rarely altered his schedule. The unexpected message filled her with a mixture of curiosity and nervous anticipation. What could be so important? Did it involve her progressor? Was it something about him? Emma pushed the thought away, reminding herself that therapy was about her journey, not his. Still, she couldn't shake the flutter of intrigue that stirred deep within her. She paced her small apartment, letting the words echo in her mind. Something important. Tonight? Talk it through. The simplicity of the message contrasted sharply with the weight it carried. Emma's heart beat faster as she tried to imagine what awaited her. She thought about Dr. Collins not in a romantic way, but with the respect and trust one reserved for someone who had seen them at their most vulnerable. He had helped her navigate her anxieties, her self-doubt, and the lingering fear that she would never truly belong anywhere. There was a quiet strength about him, a steady presence that could make even the most tangled emotions seem understandable. And now he wanted to see her tonight. Emma glanced at the clock. It was later than she usually left the house. Most people would be winding down, tucked into their routines, letting the day fade gently into night. But she felt a strange pull to move, to step out into the cool evening air and head to a place that had always been safe for her, a place where her thoughts could be untangled and her heart could breathe. She dressed quickly, choosing a sweater that was soft against her skin and jeans that fit comfortably. Outside, the city felt different under the night sky. The streets were quieter, the air crisper, as if the world itself had paused just for this moment. Emma walked briskly, her footsteps echoing slightly in the empty streets, each step carrying both anticipation and a hint of fear. As she approached the building where Dr. Collins' office was located, she felt the familiar mix of comfort and unease that always accompanied her therapy sessions. The lobby was empty, the soft hum of the elevator the only sound breaking the silence. She pressed the button for the top floor and felt her chest tighten as the doors closed. When the elevator opened, she was greeted by the soft glow of the hallway lights. Her apartment's solitude seemed miles away. Each step toward Dr. Collins' office felt deliberate, like a journey not just across the building, but into the heart of herself. She paused outside the door, taking a deep breath. There was something about tonight that felt different, more intimate, more charged, though not in any way inappropriate. It was the feeling of the unknown, of being on the cusp of a revelation that could change the way she saw herself when she finally stepped inside. Dr. Collins greeted her with the familiar, reassuring smile that had always made her feel seen. But there was a subtle tension in his expression, a quiet seriousness that hinted this session would not be like the others. Emma sank into her chair, her mind racing with questions. Yet a strange sense of calm settled over her. For the first time in weeks, she felt fully present, aware of the space, the silence, the shared anticipation of what was to come. And as the soft lamplight painted gentle shadows across the room, she realized that tonight might be the night she finally confronted the unspoken, the unacknowledged, and perhaps even the unexpected truths about herself. A single thought lingered in her mind as Dr. Collins looked at her with quiet attention. Some moments in life arrive without warning, and they have the power to change everything. MMA leaned back in the chair, letting her gaze drift to the books lining the shelves in Dr. Collins' office. She had been coming here for months now, each session gradually peeling back layers she hadn't realized were hiding beneath her daily routines. And though the office was always calm and professional, tonight felt different, quieter, as if the walls themselves were waiting for her to speak. Dr. Collins watched her with his usual gentle patience. "Emma," he began, "before we talk about tonight, I want to take a moment to remember where we started." Emma blinked, slightly startled. She wasn't used to him phrasing things that way. Usually, sessions were focused on the present, the anxieties of the week, the challenges of her life, the small victories she often overlooked. But tonight, he was inviting her to look back, to revisit the history of their connection. She thought of the first time she had walked into his office, nervous, hesitant, unsure if she could even trust herself enough to share her thoughts. Dr. Collins had smiled gently at her then. Not pushing, not judging, simply acknowledging her presence with quiet acceptance. That simple act had meant more than she could have realized at the time. Over the weeks, their sessions had become a rhythm in her life. She remembered the afternoons she had spent recounting her childhood memories, her father's quiet kindness, her mother's warm but often distracted love, the long walks through the park that sometimes felt lonely even when people surrounded her. Dr. Collins had listened. Truly listened, letting her words float freely without interruption, then guiding her gently toward understanding her own feelings. Emma's thoughts wandered further back, to the moments she had almost revealed too much, the words she had held back out of fear or uncertainty. He had always been there, silently encouraging, helping her untangle her emotions without ever forcing them. She realized now that their bond had been built on trust and vulnerability, on the slow and steady recognition of each other's humanity. There were evenings she had arrived with tears barely restrained, and he had met them with quiet words of comfort. Other times she had laughed through stories of small triumphs or awkward mishaps, and he had shared a gentle smile that made her feel seen, not just for what she was saying, but for who she truly was. Emma remembered a specific session from weeks ago. A rainy Thursday when she had been struggling with the loneliness that seemed to follow her home. She had spoken haltingly about her fears of never finding someone who truly understood her, of feeling invisible in a world that moved too fast. Dr. Collins had simply nodded. Then said, "Emma, the right connections in life often appear when we least expect them, and sometimes they're already closer than we realize." At the time, she hadn't fully understood. She had brushed it off as a comforting platitude, something to hold on to while she tried to navigate her own life. But tonight, in the quiet intimacy of the Laytower office, those words felt different. They carried weight. They hinted at a depth of understanding between them that had quietly grown over time, something she had never named, something she had never allowed herself to fully explore. Emma's chest tightened as memories of her hesitations surfaced. She had always kept a polite distance, reminding herself that boundaries existed for a reason. Dr. Collins was her therapist. Yes, but he had also become a witness to her heart in ways few others had. And that realization, which she had always approached cautiously, now pressed gently against her awareness. He noticed the subtle change in her expression and offered a reassuring smile. "It's okay to remember, Emma," he said softly. "Sometimes the past shows us what we've been searching for all along." She nodded, letting herself sink into the moment. It was strange, this feeling of nostalgia mixed with longing. She wasn't longing for romance, not in the way stories often tell, but for the pure comfort of being understood, the rare sensation of someone recognizing the pieces of her that she herself sometimes struggled to see. For a few quiet moments, they simply sat together, the room filled with a shared history neither needed to speak aloud. Emma thought of all the sessions where laughter had eased tension, where tears had unburdened her soul, where silence had been just as powerful as words. Each moment had created a subtle, unspoken closeness of bond, built not on grand gestures but on the small, steady acts. The quiet of Dr. Collins' office seemed deeper than usual, as if the night itself had paused to watch. Emma shifted slightly in her chair, her hands resting lightly on her lap, and felt a nervous flutter she hadn't expected. The memories of past sessions were still lingering, the warmth of connection and trust a gentle echo in her chest. But now, with the late-night hours stretching around them, there was a sense of something else, an unspoken tension that wasn't uncomfortable, but quietly magnetic. It began with the small things. A shared laugh at an observation about her week. A glance that lingered just a fraction longer than usual. The soft hum of the lamp seemed to draw them closer, not physically, but in a way that touched the heart. Emma realized that what she had felt as longing in the past was resurfacing, subtle, tender, and completely innocent, yet impossible to ignore. Dr. Collins, noticing the shift in her demeanor, asked softly, "Emma, how have you felt since our last session?" She hesitated, searching for words. How could she explain that? The memories of their previous conversations, the moments of shared vulnerability, had left a mark she didn't quite understand. That in every quiet reflection she felt the pull of something comforting yet profound. I think, she began, voice careful, that I've started noticing things about myself I didn't before. Small patterns, choices I make. And sometimes I see how much I've been holding back from really feeling things fully." Dr. Collins nodded, encouraging but unobtrusive. "That's a remarkable observation, Emma, and it's often in these late-night reflections, in moments we don't expect, that clarity begins to appear." Emma's gaze dropped to her hands. She remembered walking home earlier that week, a stray leaf caught in the autumn wind brushing against her jacket. It seemed trivial at the time, yet it had triggered a memory, one of laughter and lightness she had shared with Dr. Collins during a session months ago. A seemingly ordinary moment, yet it had reminded her of the comfort he offered, the way he could make even difficult thoughts feel lighter, more manageable. It was fate in a small but undeniable way. That leaf, that breeze, that shared memory all had converged to reignite something Emma had been too cautious to name. And now, in the soft lamplight of his office, the feeling returned, stronger and more tangible. Dr. Collins leaned forward slightly, his voice calm and steady. "Emma, sometimes life has a way of reminding us of what truly matters, through little coincidences, small moments that catch us off guard. And when that happens, it's worth noticing, worth acknowledging." She looked up, meeting his eyes. There was an honesty there, a depth of understanding that made her chest tighten in the most gentle way. It wasn't about romance, not in any way she could misinterpret it. Was about connection, about being recognized and valued at a level that few others ever reached. And yet the intensity of the feeling surprised her. For a long moment, they sat in silence, letting the words, the memories, and the soft presence of each other fill the space. Emma felt her heart open, not in fear, not in longing for anything forbidden, but in the pure, unguarded recognition of someone who had walked beside her emotionally for months. The sensation was electric in its quietness, a reminder that human connection, when nurtured with trust and empathy, could be profoundly moving. Then a small event shifted the room further. A gentle knock on the office door from a passing colleague brought a brief interruption. And when it cleared, the ordinary normalcy of the world returned, but something in Emma had changed. The awareness of her own emotions, her capacity to feel deeply without judgment, had strengthened. The late-night session, this unexpected encounter, had stirred something she hadn't anticipated. She laughed softly, a little breathless. "I didn't expect tonight to feel like this," she admitted, the words barely above a whisper. Dr. Collins offered a reassuring smile. "Neither did I, and yet sometimes the unexpected brings the most clarity." It shows us where our hearts have been, even if we didn't notice at first. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, not of sadness, but of release. The realization that she could trust herself to feel fully and openly was overwhelming. She had spent so long guarding her emotions, so carefully measuring what she allowed herself to experience, that she had almost forgotten the power of simply being present with another person who understood her. For a moment, the room held nothing else. No judgments, no expectations. Only the quiet understanding that they shared. Emma's heart beat in a rhythm of recognition, gratitude, and quiet awe. Here was someone who had witnessed her growth, her fears, her hopes, and had never faltered in their support. And in that recognition, something fragile and beautiful stirred within her. The knowledge, that connection, trust, and empathy were powerful enough to move hearts, even without words. As the night stretched on, Emma spoke more freely, recounting small joys and lingering worries, allowing herself to be heard without reservation. Dr. Collins listened, occasionally guiding her gently, always steady, always patient. And with each passing minute, the bond they had built over months of careful work felt alive again, vibrant and real, ignited by nothing more than presence, memory, and the subtle magic of shared understanding. By the time Emma rose to leave, the city outside was quiet and still. She walked to the door with a sense of lightness, a quiet strength settling into her chest. The late-night session had begun with anticipation and curiosity, but it ended with a profound awareness of connection, feeling that would linger long after she returned to her apartment. A reminder that even small moments could reignite the deepest, most meaningful emotions. Some nights, Emma realized, were meant to be remembered not for drama, not for excitement, but for the quiet, unshakable truth that human hearts, when truly seen, could be touched in ways that words alone could never capture. The soft hum of the office clock filled the quiet space, each tick a gentle reminder that time was moving forward, yet somehow paused just for them. Emma sat across from Dr. Collins, her hands folded neatly in her lap, though her heart felt anything but still. There was a weight in the air tonight, a delicate tension. Neither of them spoke aloud, but both felt keenly. They had shared months of sessions together, moments of laughter, quiet reflection, and unspoken understanding. Yet tonight, something lingered between them that neither had voiced. It wasn't a confession in words, not a declaration of anything forbidden. Sid was the pure, intangible pull of connection, the recognition of a shared journey that had quietly grown into something tender and profound. Emma found herself thinking about all the things she had never said, the way she had admired Dr. Collins' patience, how his calm presence often brought clarity to her scattered thoughts, how the sound of his voice could ease the chaos that sometimes lived in her mind. She had always kept these thoughts carefully tucked away, believing them irrelevant or worse, inappropriate. But now, in the stillness of the office, they felt too significant to ignore. Dr. Collins, for his part, was acutely aware of the subtle shift in Emma's demeanor. He had always maintained professional boundaries, yet he had also felt the quiet strength, the resilience, and the unspoken hope in her that made their connection unique. He noticed the way her eyes lingered on him for just a moment longer than necessary, the slight hesitations in her voice when she shared her fears, and the gentle sighs that accompanied her moments of vulnerability. "It's okay to take your time, Emma," he said softly, breaking the silence with a voice as calm and steady as the office lamps casting shadows around them. "There's no rush to put everything into words. Sometimes the quiet says more than speech ever could." Emma nodded, her throat tight with the emotions she had been holding back. She wanted to tell him everything, how much she appreciated his presence, how his words had often felt like a lifeline, how the trust between them had grown into a quiet kind of intimacy, but the words seemed too heavy, too fragile for the moment. So she stayed silent, letting her eyes reflect what she could not yet say. In the silence, memories began to surface. She remembered the rainy afternoons when she had rushed to the office, her umbrella dripping wet, feeling the weight of a long week pressing on her shoulders. Dr. Collins had greeted her with the same calm, steady smile offering a moment of warmth that made the storm outside seem distant. She remembered laughing through stories of awkward encounters and personal triumphs, feeling seen in a way that no one else had ever noticed. Yet alongside these memories was the ever-present awareness of boundaries. She knew the connection they shared was built on trust, not romance. She had promised herself she would never let her emotions cross that line. But tonight she realized that love, subtle, quiet, and emotional, was not always about boundaries or rules. Sometimes it was about being acknowledged, about feeling understood, about letting another person hold your heart in a safe space without needing to claim it. Dr. Collins noticed the slight trembling in her hands and offered a gentle Emma. His tone was soft, empathetic, but held an unspoken weight, a recognition of what lingered unvoiced. He understood the hesitation, the longing that had been carefully restrained, the quiet struggle of emotions too complex to name. She swallowed, trying to steady herself. I didn't know how much all of this mattered to me until tonight, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Not in the way you might tea. The office was quiet that evening, bathed in the warm glow of the desk lamp, and Emma felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. There was a subtle tension in the air, a sense that tonight's session was different from all the others. She had arrived with a familiar mixture of curiosity and caution. But now, sitting across from Dr. Collins, she realized that something had shifted. For months, they had shared sessions filled with laughter, reflection, and quiet understanding. They had built a connection grounded in trust, empathy, and mutual respect. Yet there had always been a silent current of emotion running beneath the surface, gentle, subtle, but impossible to ignore. Tonight, it felt as though that current was swelling, preparing to reveal itself. Dr. Collins looked at her thoughtfully. Emma, he began, his voice soft but steady. There's something I've noticed about you over these past months. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had heard his observations before, insightful and supportive. But there was something different tonight in the way he paused. As though weighing each word carefully, "You've grown in ways that are remarkable," he continued. "You've learned to trust yourself, to recognize your own strength, and to embrace emotions you once tried to hide. And I think it's time to acknowledge just how much that matters, not just to you, but to everyone who has the privilege of knowing you." Emma's eyes widened slightly. There was a weight in his words, a tenderness that made her feel both seen and vulnerable at the same time. She wanted to respond, to say something, but the right words seemed elusive. Trapped somewhere in the swell of her emotions. I've felt that," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've felt more than I realized. How much these sessions, your guidance, it's shaped me, it's helped me understand myself better than I ever could on my own." Dr. Collins nodded, his expression softening. Emma, that's the heart of it. Sometimes we don't realize the impact someone has on our lives until it's reflected back to us in moments like this. And sometimes the feelings we've held quietly inside, whether admiration, trust, or even unspoken affection, deserve acknowledgement. Her chest tightened. She knew what he meant, and yet the very idea of speaking it aloud, of letting that quiet emotion take form in words, was both exhilarating and frightening. For so long she had restrained herself, careful to maintain boundaries and avoid the vulnerability that comes with exposing the heart. But tonight something had changed. A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. I think I've been afraid to let myself feel all of it," she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "Afraid that if I allowed these emotions fully, I might lose control or change the way things have always been." Dr. Collins leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady and gentle. "Emma, emotions are not something to control. They are something to understand. And sometimes acknowledging them is the first step toward true clarity. You've carried so much quietly, but tonight you're giving yourself permission to see it." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of relief. The months of hesitation, the careful restraint, the silent longing, all of it felt suddenly lighter, as if a weight had lifted. She realized that the bond they shared, built over countless sessions of trust and empathy, had prepared her for this moment. I care deeply, she said, her voice wavering. Not in a way that changes who we are, but in a way that means something. That matters. Dr. Collins' expression softened further, understanding the depth of her words. Emma, I care as well, he said quietly. I care about your growth, your happiness, and the strength you've shown. And while our roles remain professional, the respect and admiration I have for you is undeniable. It's been there since the beginning, quietly growing alongside the trust we've built. For the first time, the unspoken truth between them, the emotions that had been hinted at, but never fully acknowledged, was brought into the light. It wasn't romantic in the sense of crossing boundaries. It was profound, heartfelt, and genuine. It was the recognition that human connection, empathy, and understanding could create moments as powerful as any declaration of love. Emma let herself breathe, her heart swelling with gratitude and clarity. The turning point wasn't a sudden change in circumstance, it was the culmination of months of shared experience. Small moments of understanding, and the quiet courage to finally speak what had been unspoken. She smiled a little shakily and whispered, I feel seen. Truly seen for the first time in a long time. Dr. Collins returned her smile with warmth and care. And that's the power of connection, Emma. To be seen, understood, and valued for who you truly are. That is what matters most. The room was silent, but the silence was full of recognition, full of emotion, full of the quiet truth that sometimes the most profound moments come not from action, but from honesty. Emma realized that her heart could carry these feelings safely. That acknowledgement did not need to lead to complication or regret. When she left the office that night, the city lights outside seemed to shine differently. Each step she took felt lighter, yet charged with the awareness of what had just unfolded. The turning point had arrived not in dramatic gestures, but in the honest, heartfelt acknowledgement of emotions long kept in the shadows. For Emma, it was transformative. She had spoken her truth, and in doing so, she had opened the door to clarity, peace, and the deep, safe understanding of a bond that would remain a cherished part of her life forever. The following morning, Emma awoke with a quiet sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. The memory of last night lingered in her mind, the soft glow of Dr. Collins' office, the gentle warmth in his words, and the honesty that had finally been spoken. For the first time, she felt the weight of her emotions settle, not as a burden, but as a source of strength. She brewed a cup of tea and looked out her window at the city bathed in soft golden light. Everything seemed ordinary, yet different. The streets, the sounds of life, even the morning breeze seemed sharper, clearer, as though she was seeing the world with fresh eyes. It wasn't that her life had changed dramatically in an instant. Nothing external had shifted. But internally, something profound had shifted. Emma thought about the months she had spent in therapy. The countless sessions where she had explored her thoughts, fears, and hopes. She remembered the laughter, the tears, and the quiet silences that had taught her more about herself than she had ever anticipated. And now, in the calm of this morning, she realized the true gift of that journey: understanding. Understanding herself, her emotions, and the value of deep, meaningful connections. She thought of Dr. Collins not just as her therapist, but as someone who had quietly guided her towards self-discovery. She recalled the way he had seen her, truly seen her, in moments when she doubted her own worth. And although they had shared something quietly profound, it was safe, pure, and respectful, a bond built on trust and care. A soft smile touched her lips as she recognized a truth she had almost forgotten. Sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes it is subtle, woven into moments of empathy, understanding, and mutual respect. It is the way someone listens without judgment, how they notice the small details that make us who we are, and how they help us feel fully ourselves. In that sense, her connection with Dr. Collins was a kind of love quiet, steady, and deeply meaningful. That afternoon, Emma took a long walk through the nearby park, the autumn air crisp and refreshing. She let herself notice everything: the crunch of leaves beneath her shoes, the way sunlight shimmered through the trees, the gentle laughter of children in the distance. And with each step, she felt lighter, more whole, as if the acknowledgement of her emotions from the previous night had cleared a space in her heart for hope and peace. She reflected on the moments of hesitation, longing, and unspoken feelings that had once weighed on her. They were no longer burdens, but lessons, reminders of the courage it takes to confront one's emotions and the beauty of connections that endure quietly. Without need for drama or display, Emma realized that life is full of unexpected moments. Some that challenge us and some that teach us. Last night had been one of both. It had challenged her to acknowledge her feelings, to speak her truth, and to confront the unspoken. And it had taught her that emotional intimacy, when built on trust and respect, could be a source of profound joy and clarity, even in the absence of conventional romance. She smiled to herself, thinking of Dr. Collins' words, being seen. Being understood is one of the most powerful gifts we can receive. She felt that gift fully now, like a warm light filling her chest. And with that understanding came a promise to herself to carry that awareness into every part of her life, to be kinder to herself, to nurture her emotional well-being, and to treasure the meaningful bonds she shared with others. Later that evening, Emma returned home with a calm heart. She sat by her window once more, notebook in hand, and began to write. Not about last night, not about Dr. Collins specifically, but about her journey, about the strengths she had discovered within herself, the lessons she had learned, and the quiet power of trust and understanding. Each word felt like a step forward, a way to honor the growth she had achieved and the clarity she now carried. As she finished writing, Emma closed her notebook and leaned back, looking out at the city lights. She realized that while the late nig